Brazil's U.S.-installed fascist Bolsonaro regime is engaging in massive voter suppression in today's election. The military was deployed, police are blocking voters in pro-Lula strongholds, and public transportation has been disrupted. Yeah, they're not doing like a full coup, but this is basically what's going on in Brazil is like super consistent with what America does all the time. America has like baked this in. Like the Republican Party in the United States of America has baked voter suppression into its calculations of how to win elections, right? And Bolsonaro is basically doing that, but doing that, but on the day of. Like if America is the ultimate, like if the Republican Party in the United States of America is the best at like voter suppression and like building this kind of inefficiency into the system to ensure that poorer voting blocks have a significantly harder time voting and getting their voices to be heard in the democratic arena. These guys, Bolsonaro looks at that and goes, "Oh, that's a pretty good idea. I should probably do that somehow. I should probably do that I should try and do that exact same thing." Brazil as a country and Brazilian politics, especially with Bolsonaro, are the closest that you can get to America, right? Like when we look at European fascism and shit like that, that has a robust history that goes back to roots that go beyond the United States of America. But when we talk about Brazil and the exportation of brain rot, like American brain rot, Brazilian politics is a 1-to-1 almost. It's the closest you can get to it. Bolsonaro has literally copied Donald Trump's flow word for word. But of course, given the history of Brazil and the military ties that Bolsonaro has, and like its own history being different than the United States of America, obviously there's some significant differences there. But as far as like the counters, as far as the rhetoric that goes on, like trans children, queering the youth, illegal voters, can't be like Venezuela. Look at how bad Venezuela is. That type of shit is nearly identical to American politics. COVID-19 is fake, that sort of stuff. And, Bolsonaro, it seems, is pulling yet another American-style conservative move here as he tries, and I hope fails, to suppress the vote on the day of voting. In America, you don't have to do this shit on the day of because Republicans, conservatives in general, like I said already, have built in voter suppression into their strategy. They do it not on the day of, they do it every other day. They make sure that polling stations are closed. They make sure that people are purged from the voter rolls. Brazil, on the other hand, much like many other countries that are not the United States of America, will either do voting on a weekend, on a Sunday, when no one's working on purpose, and will even have free public transportation on the day of so that everyone has the means to go out and vote. Okay? So, like, America doesn't even have any of that shit. So, obviously, it sounds weird when I cover it and I say, oh, free public transit is being disrupted on voting day. And you're like, what? You're like, what? What is public transit? What is free public transit? I don't understand any of these concepts. If you're an American, you're like, I don't get it. These are things that they already have so that there is higher voter participation. Okay? And Bolsonaro is working against that in a very American way, but it almost feels like I said, it almost feels like he plagiarized like America's homework He basically stole America's homework, but he did it on the day of instead of setting up the system to fail deliberately. And from what I understand and from what these reports are saying, it seems like the suppression is active in northeastern territories that are Lula strongholds. On Saturday, Lula and Sao Paulo state government candidate Fernando Haddad took part in a street parade on Paulista Avenue alongside former Uruguayan President Jose Pepe Mujica. Mujica was also seen inside the car of Sao Paulo Congressman-elect Guilherme Boyos. The picture went viral. Boyos' car is a popular model, and Mujica became famous for owning an old Volkswagen Beetle even while in the presidency. Minas Gerais, a court decision ordered state-owned company CBTU to offer free rides on Election Day. However, the company refused to do so earlier today, claiming it had not been officially informed of the court decision. This is significant. Okay. President Bolsonaro visited the Galeão International Airport in Rio de Janeiro today to welcome local football club Flamengo after their Copa Libertadores triumph in Ecuador. Mr. Bolsonaro posted for photos lifting the trophy, doing like the classic, kissing babies, but Brazilian style shit. Federal Accounts Court audit confirms the reliability of the Brazilian voting system. It took over 5.8 million votes published and printed receipts from over 4,100 voting machines, cross-checking them with the results, and there were no discrepancies. So they're not cheating the vote tabulation. They're trying to do voter suppression. But instead of doing voter suppression year-round to ensure that, like, on the day of, you literally cannot go out and vote with ease, they're trying to do this in a country where there's, I think it's compulsory, right? Oh, it is, yeah. Brazil has compulsory voting, so you have to vote. Okay? For those of you who don't know, Brazil has compulsory voting for literate citizens between 18 and 70 years old, including those who live abroad. Which, by the way, again, you have to go out and vote. Even if you don't vote for anyone, you have to still go out and vote. And the reason why they do that is because they want to increase voter participation, right? So Bolsonaro is going against the system that has compulsory voting, that has like built-in safeguards to ensure as many people vote as possible. So that's already going to be difficult, okay? By the way, those who do not vote in an election and do not later present an acceptable justification, such as being away from their voting location at the time, are subject to a fine. It's a baby fine, but it doesn't matter. It's like it's symbolic. Proof of voting compliance by having voted, justify the absence, or pay the fine is required for some transactions, such as obtaining a passport, admission to a public university, government employment, and loans from a government-owned bank. There is significant opposition to compulsory voting, and despite the enforcement, about 30 million Brazilians, over 20% of registered voters, did not vote in the 2018 election. The fine is like 65 cents USD. So, how do you do suppression in a compulsory system? Genuine question. Well, just like this. One, you make the state transit refuse to do free transit on the day of the election, which you're supposed to, right? This is an amenity offered to every citizen, specifically to increase voter participation. So you change that. Then you use the federal police to put blockades in roads, stop buses where buses full of people. You do some level of voter intimidation that way. Former President Lula's campaign requested the Superior Electoral Court to subpoena the head of Brazil's Federal Highway Police for several cases of alleged voter suppression. Okay? Under Bolsonaro, Brazil's highway police prefers force over human rights. Once celebrated for his work, Brazil's Federal Highway Police, PRF in Portuguese, is now taking a more hands-on and violent role. Videos are published on social media. This has been coming out this morning. Showing that federal highway police agents are conducting operations and causing traffic jams in mostly rural areas. Twitter users are complaining that these operations mostly hinder poorer voters who tend to lean towards Lula. Here's some videos of this, like where they're setting up blockades and basically engaging in voter intimidation and voter suppression. The goal of the Federal Highway Police is to stop, at this point, stop people from going out and voting.
Tá deixando passar nada aqui, isso. Um bocado preso já.
Okay? Important. Silvani Vasquez, the head of the Brazil Federal Highway Police, asked his Instagram followers to vote for President Bolsonaro. He later deleted the post. Earlier on Sunday, the Superior Electoral Court subpoenaed Vasquez to explain cases of alleged voter suppression. Motherfucker literally was, hogs. Universal. ACAP. Universal principle. Remember, they're pigs in Brazil. They're pigs in America. They're pigs everywhere. This is the least surprising thing I've ever fucking heard. Okay? There are more details on it. On alleged voter suppression, the Federal Highway Police increased the number of routine searches on vehicles on Sunday, Brazil's runoff election day, by 80% when compared to October 2, the first round. Off-duty officers were called to work to fulfill the high number of police operations. In all, a total of 3,100 officers were called up. One federal highway police officer who spoke to the Brazilian Report under condition of anonymity called the move unusual. And now the Lula campaign is requesting the arrest of PRF boss Silvani Vasquez. The controversial operations are happening in poorer areas, and they're targeting poorer voters who tend to lean towards Lula, according to the polls. Okay? Look at where they're doing. Look at where they're conducting operations. Here's more breaking news. Brazil's Chief Electoral Justice, Alexandre de Moraes, denies the need to extend the election, saying that federal highway police operations did not deprive Brazilians from voting. Huh. So shocking. So interesting. A famous journalist wrote on Twitter, my son took 3 hours to get from Tijuca to Campo Grande, a reason 3 blitz. In the second one, the policeman asked, are you going to vote right? My son, yes, in Bolsonaro. The policeman said, so you won't be stopped anymore. Then he stuck a sticker on the car window. That's insane. But again, it's like firsthand accounts, so I don't know. Despite Justice Moraes' comments, which he based on data from the electoral courts and the Federal Highway Police, many people are still struggling to reach their electoral zones. In Mato Grosso State, for instance, indigenous leaders in the Xingu National Park say many local communities were unable to vote due to a lack of transportation. In the meantime, Brazilians on social media turned coup d'etat into a trending topic. An army operation is happening on the bridge linking Rio de Janeiro and Niterói went viral. There's also an army operation happening. I don't know what the fuck that's about. So Bolsonaro is pulling out all the fucking stops to ensure that Lula does not win. There couldn't be a more clear example of the role of the bourgeois state in the use of monopoly violence than this. We have militarized police, by the way. I mean, yeah, this is... this is, like I said, something that is institutionalized in America, but in a country like Brazil where they have compulsory voting, Bolsonaro is trying to do it last second. Military police got on public while in uniform, transportation, and told people to not vote for Lula. Do not support ex-inmate. This is what these operations by the PM, PRF, and PF throughout Brazil are all about. Electoral crime and coercion of voters. It is Bolsonarism given its last cry of despair.
Tá ouvindo bem? Então vou ser breve. A nossa presença aqui ela tem uma justificativa. Qual é? Inibir ações criminosas. Sou sargento Maurício aqui da 14ª CI, faço parte desse trabalho. Por quê? No passado as linhas passavam por aqui, elas foram alvo de várias ações criminosas. Mas nós trabalhamos muito de forma técnica, rigorosamente dentro da lei, intensificando as abordagens. Nesse coletivo nós aprendemos.
I have no idea what the fuck this dude's saying. He's saying he's trying to stop crime. I don't want to sound alarmist, but there's a serious attempt at a coup happening in the open right now in Brazil. The federal traffic police, along with state police and elements of the army, are trying to suppress the vote across the country. I will continue to post updates. Here's the supposed order from Bolsonaro supporting Director General of the Federal Traffic Police. We already covered this, right? And he's like carrying out operations against public transport. For those of you who don't understand, for Americans, public transport is profoundly important in other countries because they do not have an exclusively car-reliant infrastructure, especially for poorer people. That's precisely the reason why public transit is free on election day. It's supposed to be free so that everyone can go to everyone can go to the nearest voting location and be able to go out and vote. Okay? The Lula campaign has asked the Electoral Court to take action against the director of the Federal Traffic Police. If it doesn't, I fear the worst. Here's footage showing the military working with the police to illegally suppress votes outside of the city of Niterói, just on the other side of the bay from Rio. Here, this is another video that I wanted to show you guys. Anyway, here's the video of the PRF, as you can see, stopping people from going out and voting. Some of them are getting gung-ho about it and openly stating their antagonism towards Lula. Others are just stopping buses, stopping public transport. Public transit is, the means for poorer people who are more likely to vote for Lula to get to the voting stations and be able to exercise their democratic right. The latest reporting indicates that more than 560 took place, with as many as over 3 million voters affected. They were distracting us with talk over the electronic voting booths and stolen radio adverts while planning this. The operation was planned in the presidential palace on October 19th. It seems as if the Electoral Court is bending over for the police and won't do anything besides an order to end the operations. Why not lie and vote for Lula anyway? Man, we're talking about 3 million people who could have been potentially impacted by this. Marginal things like this genuinely put the fear of God in everyday citizens. What are you talking about? That's why we have, like, here, even in America, we have what is it called? We have rules against, like, what you can and can't wear to the polling station, for example. It's electioneering. You can't influence people at the polls. In years of voting here in Brazil since 1989, I've never seen a security operation as big and threatening as this one. Like, this is a lighter version of things to come. You can see this as a stress test, or what is it, like a trial balloon? Is that what the term is? You can either see this as a stress test for more military presence, or you can see it as like, you know, a soft coup. And if he's doing shit like this, it makes it all the less likely that Bolsonaro will concede even if Lula wins, which is also terrifying. So if he's, like, willing to fucking weaponize the federal police and factions of the army, which do have allegiances with Bolsonaro, some of the factions of the army, all of a sudden, even if he fucking loses, things can escalate. In Brazil, the national vote tally determines the election, so suppressing votes in certain areas in certain states can have national implications. Bus companies have also tried and failed to overturn the obligation to provide free transport on election day to disenfranchise poor voters. Lula's Workers' Party has reportedly already filed a complaint with the federal authorities, but we already know the impact of that. The federal authorities said, no, just halt the operations, but there's no reason to extend the time, like the final hour that you can vote. Majority of those generals publicly supported the military dictatorship and torture many times, including fucking Bolsonaro, who is a torturer himself and has said that a military dictatorship would be a better future for Brazil. And then won the election, by the way. He said that last time, and then he won the election. So think about that for a second. Like, if you want to understand the mentality of Bolsonaro voters, recognize that, like, they're open to that kind of thing. They're not thinking about it like, oh, man, it sure would be shitty if there was a military dictatorship in the country. They're like, no, actually, that'd be sick, because then we could just be as brutal as we want to our enemies, to socialists, to communists. Okay? Bolsonaro managed to say that the 2018 elections were fraudulent, where he himself won. I know. You know who else said that? Donald Trump. Because Bolsonaro is literally just trying to be Donald Trump. He is using, like, in other countries, some of these people have, like, long-standing fascist opinions and ideological roots that ideological opinions that override their interest in like trying to copy America's flow. Bolsonaro is not one of those people. He very clearly monitors, almost like Ron DeSantis, exactly what Donald Trump does and tries to recreate it in Brazil, even if it's a detriment, okay? The only thing he's done better than Donald Trump is literally he's gotten COVID like 100 times. I mean, this motherfucker's been stabbed. He didn't die. He's gotten COVID like 100 times. He didn't die. He had the hiccups so aggressively that he had to go to the hospital and pump like poop directly out of his nose. Pounds and pounds of fucking poop out of his nose, and nothing happened. He famously last week said he's not a pedophile, which is an insane thing to say. He talked on a fucking podcast about how he met this sexy, and I'm using the terms that he used, okay? He met an attractive 14-year-old girl, he said, okay? Which is like immediately, it's like, what the fuck? Yeah, he was just driving around in his fucking Vespa, met an attractive 14-year-old girl, he said. This girl, they hit it off. This is his words. They hit it off. She brought him back to her house, and she was Venezuelan, and the house was full of sex trafficked minors, and he just left. He just left the house. He didn't do anything. He just kept that story with himself, and then decided to talk about it. But then everyone was like, bro, you just said the 14-year-old girl was hot, and you didn't do anything about like these supposed sex trafficked Venezuelan girls, right? So why didn't you do that? So then the campaign literally released a fucking video. Or not a video. The campaign literally released a fucking ad saying Bolsonaro is not a pedophile. Yeah, he goes, here's the story with the fucking subtitles. Bolsonaro's tale on a podcast that aired yesterday of how after feeling some chemistry with a 14-year-old girl, he followed her into a brothel full of Venezuelan children, has supporters insisting he's not a pedophile. Watch the subtitled video and see for yourself. If you want to understand how Brazilian politics operates, by the way, this is identical, again, to conservative movements here in America. After all, Donald Trump has said things about how beautiful very young girls are. But also Roy Moore comes to mind immediately, who very openly did pedophilia, and yet the entire National Republican Party backed him in Alabama.
Eu estava em Brasília, na comunidade de São Sebastião, se não me engano.
Said I was riding my motorcycle in South Sebastio. They complain he's riding a motorcycle. I do. I also ride a jet ski, a horse, a donkey. I stopped in a corner and pulled off my helmet and saw 3 or 4 pretty little girls, 14 or 15 years old, all dressed up on a Saturday in a slum. And I saw they all looked alike. There was some chemistry. Bro, pretty little girls, they're 14 and 15 visibly. There's chemistry. Can I come into your house is what he asked. He's kicking game at 14-year-olds in the fucking made-up story in his mind, okay? Why? Out of all the fucking stories he could have made up, why the fuck did you decide to make up a story where you're a pedophile? Can I come into your house? There was some chemistry, so I said, can I come into your house? And I went in. There were 15 to 20 girls in there on a Saturday morning dressing up. All Venezuelans. And I asked, why are pretty little girls like you all getting dressed up on a Saturday?
Meninas bonitinhas, 14, 15 anos, se arrumando no sábado, pra quê? Ganhar vida.
And they said to make a living. I don't understand, like, the story that he was trying to make here, the story that he was trying to say is, like, obviously, Venezuelan communism has created a system in which, like, there are, little girls being sex trafficked, right? It's supposed to be a scary story about like Venezuela and communism and immigration and what's happening to human beings as a consequence of communism. Bolsonaro, of course, is like the opposite of that, right? So he's trying to describe this situation, this scenario, but because he's such a creepy fucking pervert, yes, he admitted all this unprompted. He made up a story where he still came across like a fucking creepy pervert. Even worse, after all this blew up, he sent his wife and the women's right minister to the place to intimidate those girls and recording a video denying he's a pedo. It's insane. The story is real, but the girls were dressing up for church. Oh, okay. This is beyond dumb politics. We've reached the next level of depravity and lies. And the girls weren't making a living. They were getting ready for mass. I mean, dude, every part of this story, literally, like, even if that was a real brothel, like the way that this creepy psychopath is claiming it was, he still is in the wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, he took a story that seems insane because, like, in the fucking hypothetical story you made up in your fucking mind, even if this wasn't a hypothetical story. I mean, this is probably not a hypothetical story. This is not a fake story. But, like, the story that he is telling, he's literally saying he's a pedophile. Why would you follow a 14-year-old girl into her home? Why did you say that a 14-year-old little girl was sexy or attractive, hot? It's fucking psychotic. Like, can I come into your house? Who does that? He said there was chemistry between him and a 14-year-old girl. They were innocent and simply existing, and he thinks that's the most viable option. No, it just, like, it doesn't make sense. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's just a man in his 60s who feels chemistry with the 14-year-old children but does not have relations with them. Why, as the president of Brazil, did he not report an international child sex trafficking operation to the authorities? Exactly. Like, he was the president at this point. Like, he's saying he was the president by this point. People are not just defending him. People are still voting for him. It's embarrassing that he has a big chance of winning today's election. Yeah. Anyway, it's just one of the many things that have been completely psychotic about the Brazilian elections and just Bolsonaro in general, other than the routine visits to the hospital. Obstruction of creating barriers to voting is a crime in Brazil. The Federal Highway Police, run by a self-declared Bolsonaro supporter, federal police, army, and state police forces are targeting and searching buses full of voters in pro-Lula areas. Only 2 hours of voting left. Globo is reporting that today's voter suppression efforts by federal police forces were the first planned in a meeting in the inner circle of Bolsonaro's campaign in the presidential palace on October 19th. Voting in Brazil ends in, I believe, half an hour. Bolsonaro's campaign source quoted by Globo, "You wouldn't even need to give an explicit order or anything, as these police officers are basically composed of supporters of the president. The consequences of such an operation is obvious." Here's the video of the mayor of the town in what is it? How do you say this? Quite? I don't know. In the northeastern state of Paraíba, which is majority pro-Lula, in front of a federal highway police checkpoint that he says is intended so that some people do not come vote. Yeah, half an hour, but it could be extended if the electoral minister decides. No, the electoral minister literally decided not to extend it and said that the voting has not been compromised. Alexandre de Moraes, president of the Superior Electoral Court, is giving a press conference about the Brazilian elections. An hour ago, he literally said that the police operations were conducted using transport law. This delayed voters from being able to vote, but in no case did it prevent anyone from voting. In no case did the vehicles return to their place of origin. And he said that the operations that were stopping buses will be investigated, but he just is claiming that voters were simply just delayed and weren't stopped from voting. But ultimately, up to 3 million people in various different areas, 3 million poorer people that are using public transport were delayed in voting. So Maurice is making claims that he cannot possibly confirm that no voter was prevented from voting or returned home. He's essentially washing over a clear attempt by Bolsonaro to use police power to suppress votes in order to skew the election in his favor. President's Superior Electoral Court says voter suppression by police reportedly planned and ordered by Bolsonaro campaign did not actually suppress votes, and he will not extend the hours of operation of polling stations to compensate. There it is. He literally admitted that delays were happening, but then said, but they were not significant enough. The delays were not significant enough for him to extend voting. And people are saying Alexandre de Moraes is against Bolsonaro. So I wonder why. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about him to give you an adequate answer here, but things that I suspect is, one, he could be fearful of additional military retaliation. Two, he could feel comfortable that Lula's odds of winning are still super high. And three, he could be an institutionalist, which is the worst kind, like an institutionalist lib who says, yeah, they're kind of cheating, but they're not cheating enough that like it actually requires me to take some kind of judicial action. Because a lot of people, like, it seems like from the commentary or from what he is, from his statements, it seems like it's the third one where it's like, well, yeah, they're kind of cheating, but they're not cheating hard enough. They're cheating within the system. So, you know, please stop doing that. But also, you know, they didn't actually stop anybody and like directly tell them to go fucking home. So I guess maybe, you know, we should continue. It's worth pointing out that Alexandre de Moraes, the president of the Superior Electoral Court, has been very pro-police throughout his career, but he's also been one of the main targets of Bolsonarista anger due to his many rulings against the president. Moraes is actually doing a lot to put a break in Bolsonaro's campaign filled with lies. The Bolso minions fucking hate him, but I don't really know what the fuck is up with his decision. Maybe he's afraid. I don't know. I mean, if he's an institutionalist, then that is the answer. He could be like a right-wing institutionalist, not want Lula to win, but also despise Bolsonaro like a never-Trump Republican, you know what I mean? Despise Bolsonaro because Bolsonaro is unkempt and kind of like gives the game away, ruins the game for institutionalist right-wingers a little bit, and you know, and ultimately still wants to maintain the presence of law and order above all else. I mean, there are a lot of things that are wrong that aren't prosecutable under the law. Just because somebody realizes that doesn't mean actually they like or endorse. No, judges have leniency. Judges have a way to interpret pre-existing rules that that he could absolutely use in this circumstance. He openly states that, yes, delays happened as a consequence of the PRF actions, which means he has ample ground to, yes, judicial discretion. Thank you. He has literal fucking reason that he has stated openly for extending at least the last moment that you can, actually, you know, vote. Like, he could 100% extend the voting time. And he has that power. He has enough reason to do so, and he's refusing to do so, and it's weird. If Lula wins later today, it will not only be a victory for Brazilians, but also for Venezuelans, Cubans, Palestinians, and all others targeted by the far-right pro-Israel foreign policy of Bolsonaro's regime, totally beholden to U.S. imperial interests. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Lula is going to be that aggro, but maybe I'm wrong. Bolsonaro's a cook of Israel to the CIA, following their demands dutifully as it hurts Brazilians, like when he kicked out Cuban doctors or praised the assassination of Soleimani to please Israel and Trump. With Lula, all those relations will be restored for mutual benefit. Here, recognized Palestinian statehood as president, leading the way for other South American countries to do the same. He also defied them when they were gearing up for war with Iran, which Hillary in particular did not like, as he discusses here.
Eu cheguei em Moscou, fui encontrar com o Medvedev, o Obama tinha ligado para o Medvedev pedindo para eu não ir, que eu ia ser enganado.
Why? Why so concerned?
Apesar disso, veja, apesar disso, o Obama não estava gostando que eu fosse ao Irã, mas o Obama fez uma carta dizendo que se o Ahmadinejad concordasse com tais, sabe, condições, para ele estaria bem. Então foi com essa carta que eu viajei para o Irã. E chegamos lá, depois de 2 dias de conversa, estava muito difícil, eu falei para o Ahmadinejad, eu não vou regressar ao Brasil sem a tua assinatura. Sabe? E ele falou para mim, não, mas não dá para ser acordo de palavra, não dá para ser um acordo verbal. Eu dizia, não dá, porque lá ninguém acredita em vocês. Eles dizem que os iranianos são mentirosos e
Isn't that funny that they say Iranians are liars and they don't honor agreements? When the real reason why there's a denuclearization conversation that has been cast aside now is because Americans did not honor their agreements. Not only that, but also America literally was like, even though we're blowing up the denuclearization deal, even though third-party investigators from the United Nations are openly stating that Iran is still following the denuclearization terms, we're still going to add additional sanctions. Just so unimaginably cruel. But of course, it's totally fine. It's totally valid because it's an enemy state. More sanctions, baby. Art of the deal.
Não cumpre acordo. Então, eu só vou se for por escrito. E ele aceitou o acordo, tal como nós propusemos. E eu fiquei surpreso, porque quando eu imaginava que o Obama ia ficar feliz com o acordo, ele aumentou as sanções contra o Irã. Aí nós descobrimos que a Hillary Clinton não tinha conhecimento da carta que o Obama tinha me entregue, porque ela estranhou quando o ministro Celso Amorim falou para ela da carta. Mas eu não tive outra situação a não ser publicar a carta do Obama. Sabe? A não ser publicar a carta do Obama para as pessoas perceberem que nós não tínhamos feito nenhuma loucura. E o acordo que nós fizemos era mais preciso do que o acordo que foi assinado pela Europa e pelos Estados Unidos. Então, foi uma coisa muito desagradável. Qual é a impressão que eu fiquei? A impressão que eu fiquei é que os países ricos, sobretudo liderado, sabe, pelo pensamento, sabe, do Departamento de Estado norte-americano, não aceitam um novo protagonista na área. Ou seja, na cabeça deles, o Brasil não tinha tamanho. 1980 foi uma das economias que mais cresceu no mundo. Em média, o Brasil cresceu 7% ao ano entre 50 e 80. 30 anos de crescimento consecutivo. Por que não foi feita política de distribuição de renda? Por que não foi feita política de inclusão social? Por que a economia brasileira crescendo não fez o povo crescer junto? Sabe por quê, Brian? Porque o milagre do nosso governo não foi o boom das commodities, foi o boom da inclusão social. Eu tinha certeza absoluta que o pobre não seria o problema. O pobre seria a solução na medida em que a gente conseguisse incluir as pessoas mais pobres dentro do orçamento da União e na medida em que a gente permitisse que esse pobre tivesse acesso a emprego, a salário, a crédito e a renda para ele poder virar um consumidor. Porque não existe na face, sabe, do planeta Terra, mesmo aqueles que defendem que a Terra é plana, não existe na face histórica da humanidade algum momento em que alguma economia cresceu se você não tivesse uma demanda interna muito forte ou uma demanda externa muito forte. O problema do Brasil é que nós conseguimos crescer a demanda externa e conseguimos crescer a demanda interna. Nós resolvemos fazer um programa chamado Luz para Todos, porque tinha gente que morava vizinho de uma termoelétrica, de uma hidrelétrica, que não tinha energia elétrica, o fio passava em cima da cabeça da pessoa, não tinha energia elétrica. Nós levamos a energia elétrica para 15 milhões de pessoas.
Think about that, by the way. A lot of people don't understand, like, why literacy programs are so significant in countries like Latin American countries especially. Like, you're talking about a rural population that is still closely resembling peasantry, okay, in the way that they exist in a lot of these places that have only recently fucking been able to, through these socialization measures, reach a level of existence that closely resembles modernity.
De graça, o Estado pagando.
Are you saying, like, that's the first time in, like, the 90s that there's dudes that got electricity for the first time?
Porque se o Estado não leva energia para o pobre, o rico não leva. O rico só leva para quem pode pagar. E que tem a obrigação de garantir que os pobres possam acender uma luz, ter uma televisão, uma geladeira, é um partido como o PT, porque foi para isso que nós fomos criados.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been voted in as Brazil's next president. It was a very tight race. The former leftist leader, who served 18 months in prison for corruption charges later annulled, took nearly 51% of the vote. The far-right incumbent Jair Bolsonaro won 49%. Mr. Bolsonaro becomes the first sitting president in Brazil ever to lose re-election. Our South America correspondent Katie Watson reports.
Celebration on the streets of Sao Paulo and a sense of relief. They predicted a tight race, and it was a nail-biter to the very end.
I feel free, relieved, not only for the Brazilian people, but for the whole planet, for the Amazon, for the democracy, for the human rights. So we are very happy.
It's a very divided country, though. There'll be lots of people unhappy.
I gotta pee, I'll be back.
It was a very little difference, the small difference. So we have to be very patient, and we have to leave the anger and the hatred away.
What a comeback for Brazil's president-elect, a man who left power just 12 years ago with a sky-high approval rating, but who then subsequently fell from grace over corruption scandals. Here he is again, Lula 2.0.
It was the hardest campaign of my life. It wasn't man against man, party against party. It was a group of people who love freedom and democracy against authoritarianism.
The noise on the streets filled the silence from Bolsonaro's camp. The speculation was that he went to bed. While voting was largely peaceful, there was a lot of expectation and nerves on Sunday as people cast their ballot. In this unequal country, the divide was clear. Rich and poor, left and right. People had a stark choice to make.
I'm voted for Bolsonaro, of course.
What's the best thing about Bolsonaro? Why do you like Bolsonaro?
I don't agree with him like 100%. I think he has a lot of flaws, but he's a man of God. He has like the right principles. And
bro, this is literally direct Trump. Just instead of him saying Bolsonaro, listen to him say Trump. It's the same. I have heard, this is what I've heard evangelicals say about Trump, dog. The same shit. He's a man of principles, you know, he's a man of God. Like, you know, how he said he was vibing with a 14-year-old girl who he found attractive. You know? The police in Sao Paulo legit said that they were allowing whichever party won to have their party on the street. Basically, whoever lost had to stay the fuck away so there wouldn't be fights. It's funny because Bolsonaristas assume the cops will always be on their side like in America, but Brazil's institutions haven't rotted away into that level of police state yet. Probably because we don't have a two-party system. I mean, that's a definitely regional thing. That's 100% a regional thing. There's no shot that that is the case, especially because Bolsonaro still very much controls the federal police, for example. Like you're talking about a country where yesterday the federal highway police, led by a Bolsonaro supporter who's like an avid open Bolsonaro supporter, was stopping people from voting. And the army also was trying to divert people from voting. They were going into fucking public transportation where the poorest of the working class are utilizing to go and vote. And trying to get them to not vote for the criminal, Lula. And by the way, he still lost, so, you know, get fucked. R.I.P. Bozo. The faces of communism. Fucking terrifying. Trigger warning, bro. Stop. What is... here, let's finish this.
He's not the biggest thief that ever exist in Brazil.
It's very sad, in my opinion, to see Brazil in this state where we have to decide between two candidates that just make Brazil such a polarized country, inciting violence, extremes, and I think especially they don't represent any of the young population, right?
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? Why is it so fucking devastating? I don't understand. What do you mean? Is she talking about Bolsonaro? How is she saying both sides on this? Also, holy fuck, dude. Western media find one non-white person in a Latin American country challenge, impossible difficulty, and make sure that that non-white person isn't the like fucking token Bolsonarista, okay? Holy fuck. They literally go to the heartland. They just straight up go to the heart of the fucking city and find the wealthiest, centrist, whitest fucking libs they possibly can, who have like gotten education in like liberal arts institutions in America, and then go back and they're like, yeah, my father, who owns like 8 fucking agricultural farms, is very upset right now with the way things are going, and I also have that same kind of resentment and animosity built into me because we recognize where we make our money. It was pretty sick when Bolsonaro made slavery legal, okay? It worked well for our agricultural output, none of which was going back to the Brazilian people who were starving, but it's cool, you know? So it's a real both sides kind of situation.
Any progress in the country. It's really very sad. So my vote is a vote of protest.
Amid such division, it was Lula who made it to the finish line first.
People here
That's
are
right,
shouting,
baby.
Lula has returned. Like him or loathe him, this is a historic moment for Brazil. 20 years after Lula first
Cês forçaram a prisão dele quando ele ia vencer. Agora ele tá de volta, o que vai acontecer?
For Brazil, his job will.
Esse ano Lula bota o Bolsonaro pra mamar. Vai dar PT, vai dar PT, vai dar PT, vai dar PT, vai dar. Esse ano Lula bota o Bolsonaro pra mamar. Vai dar PT, vai dar PT, vai dar PT, vai dar PT, vai dar.
Os ladrão, tá? Então tá bom.
Vai dar PT, vai dar PT, vai dar. Bro, Lemma, what are they doing? L is for Lula. It doesn't mean like you lost. When you throw up the L, you're saying it for Lula. Red is also the color of Lula's party and not Bolsonaro's. Like the liberals are also right wing. Most people don't understand these concepts because they're so fucking brain broken by American politics. But despite Bolsonaro being a fascist, his party is the liberal party, for the record. Liberals are centrist at best, literally everywhere in the world, and people don't even realize. Yeah. So in many ways, in the United States of America, the Democratic Party being liberal is actually apt because it is a center-right party. But like liberals in other countries are openly center-right. Like everybody understands that that's not the only leftist option, okay? In other countries. When you are a leftist in other countries, you either join a socialist party, you join a labor party, you know what I mean? You join a communist party, depending on where you are in the world. You don't join the liberal party. The liberals, like the Lib Dems, for example, in the UK, are center-right. Bolsonaro voters pray as rival Lula wins Brazil's presidential runoff. Let's watch some fucking beautiful tears, dude. Why does this have the same energy as the megachurch Trump cult shit? Why do right-wingers always ride the fascist dick so hard? Bro, this is literally the exact same. The energy is the exact same as Trump supporters fucking crying that Trump lost the election to Brandon, because it is the exact same. Do you understand? The audience is the exact same. The messaging is the exact same. The fucking attitude is the exact same. if you looked at the demographic breakdown, you would literally probably find an identical demographic breakdown of like, you know, a swath of the working poor who have been duped because of like anti-vaxxer conspiracies or anti-LGBT conspiracies, you know, that sort of shit. And then an overwhelming amount of like wealthy people.
He was going to rid the country of leftists. He was going to ride them out of town. He was going to put a stop to activism. That's when he won. When he lost, broke with protocol entirely. Nothing to say. Some might see that as a lack of class.
I don't think that's a lack of class. I think that's deliberate. That's not a lack of class. I think that's straight up fucking deliberate, okay? It's terrifying.
Will he challenge the results? It's a possibility. But one thing that was very quick, as soon as the result came in,
Bolsonaro supporters have absolutely no idea what to do because their master is quiet. They don't know if they should protest or just shut up. It's honestly funny to go outside here in Rio. Honestly, it's better that he's shutting the fuck up at this stage, though. Like, obviously, the best possible thing would be for Jair Bolsonaro to come out and be like, I'm actually dying. I'm going to the hospital for the 700th time, and this time, you know, it's a real whodunit. I'm dying, actually, and also I concede. Like, that would be the best possible outcome, okay? Which is not going to happen. But currently, as it stands, him coming out and being like, the election was stolen, like Donald Trump has done, okay? My wife left me, brother, and the election was stolen by fake communist Venezuelans or whatever the fuck he's going to say. And then that the streets should, you know, you should take to the streets and you know, kill Lula supporters or whatever the fuck, is not going to be the best possible outcome here. It would be significantly worse. I know his wife legit left him. That wasn't a joke. I know. Truckers are blocking roads in 12 states and asking for a Bolsonaro-led coup. I love that. My brilliant truckers, baby. I'm standing in solidarity with my brilliant truckers, as always. The video is a commemoration of the victory from Flamengo, a soccer team that uses red and black on their shield. Here is some news from Reuters. Brazil's far-right president Jair Bolsonaro will not contest his electoral defeat and plans to address the nation later on Tuesday. His communications minister Fabio Faria told Reuters as a growing number of political allies advised him to concede. Some of Bolsonaro's hardline supporters have called for military intervention to keep Bolsonaro in power and stop leftist President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva from taking office. Pro-Bolsonaro truck drivers blocked federal highways. The presidential address may diffuse the protests across Brazil by small groups of his supporters.
President Jair Bolsonaro breaking his silence for the first time since the election on Sunday. A message of, well, it sounded like reassurance that he was going to comply with the rules of the election.
Did he even concede? I pissed and I lost it.
Accept the results.
Commie's bad. I did good. God is good. Screw those people who didn't vote for me. Bye. He said, don't be violent to private property like the left. Then said, I will follow the Constitution and peaced out. Okay, well, that's a concession. That's a bit of a concession. I mean, maybe you should move on to... Wait, what? That's a new one. When people are like, you're covering this topic too much. That's pretty funny. When you got well, you know, one of the world's largest economies and you have like a fascist ex-president refusing to fucking concede the election and someone's like, bro, can we just move on to my small town?